And welcome back, everybody, to the Podcaster Nation. That's right. I said welcome back because I know you were just listening to our stuff and you came back because you wanted more. Folks, we have a lot more for you. So that was an excellent choice. Folks are brilliant. This is the podcast that's about podcasters, it's for podcasters, and it's done by podcasters. And you cracked the code. Our guest today is, in fact, a podcaster, amongst other things. So we're going to hear this awesome story and find out what this gentleman's up to. This is the place where the rising tide raises all ships. So let's get sailing. Bring in our guest, the founder of the Texas Freedom Fund and the host of the Executive Connect podcast. Please welcome Bryan Hancock. Bryan, how you doing today?
Hey, thanks for great. Thanks for having me, Rory.
Yeah, I appreciate you making time to come in here today. And I know we had to reschedule from last time because we had a little technical difficulty. So I just want to thank you very much for overcoming that inconvenience and coming on the show, man. I really do appreciate that.
Yeah, as a fellow podcaster, I can appreciate it. The technology never works the way it's
For
supposed to.
sure. For sure. For sure. All right. Well, Bryan, we have a lot to kind of cover today. Why don't you just start by telling everybody who is Bryan Hancock? What are you about? What brings you here today, brother?
Yeah, so hey, I'm Bryan Hancock. I grew up in the Austin area. Been doing mostly real estate projects for the last 20 years or so, but I've had all sorts of corporate gigs too. Worked at Lockheed Martin on their flight control system for a while, and Dell, and lots of other big corporate entities like that. So I have an engineering degree, engineering background, and then also a bunch of business coursework. So kind of a one of those types, the sort of the analytical type. But our latest claim to fame is our oil and gas venture. So we've been learning the craft for that for the last 3 years or so. And we got a new fund that we started out really to primarily to help people with their taxes, but the net returns for it are really good too. So you never really should invest in anything that's just only for the tax benefits. So you're trying to maximize after tax returns and not minimize taxes. But the glorious thing of this is it's kind of the best of both worlds. So that's kind of why we've sunk all of our time into it here the last several years.
Okay. And that project you're talking about is this Texas Freedom Fund?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
it's just fracking projects in the Eagle Ford Shale and for in the Permian Basin. But the way it's set up is it really helps people out on their active tax income. So if you have the very fortunate first world problem of having a real high active tax income, there's not really a great way to get rid of those. Your largest partner in deals, which is Uncle Sam, unless this is one of the few things that I've found that isn't just throwing money away and trying to go after the 28 cents or 30 cents in tax savings by wasting a dollar. So these are really good projects, and you get to deduct almost all your investment against your active tax income in the first year, which is kind of cool. I haven't found anything else like it.
Interesting. So at this point, you are in the stage of looking for active investors for this one?
Yeah, so we spent the last 6 months or so setting it up. It's quite complicated to set up. Most people that do things like this, it costs on the order of like $250,000 to set it up. But I was able to leverage a lot of my past securities relationships and deferred a lot of that, and we were able to keep the cost down because I very purposely wanted to set it up where first time investors that want to invest as little as $25,000, they're able to do that. The entry price for these sorts of deals is generally like $250,000 if you go direct to the operators. And then there's also the added thing that most folks don't really know what to look for or how to vet the deals, that sort of stuff. So we really have done all the brain damage for the last 3 years trying to figure all that stuff out. And we're finally opening it up for investors to be able to invest alongside us.
Wow. That's interesting. All right. So, all right, real estate and oil and gas and a freedom fund and everything else. Um, does all of that have something to do with the podcast? And where does the podcast actually fit in and come from in all of this?
Yeah, it's tangentially related. So what's ironic, and we didn't set it up like this. Like we set up the podcast originally. It's my wife's podcast. It's called the Executive Connect podcast. We originally set it up just kind of like as a give back, and we wanted to be able to meet interesting people, not knowing how much work it was going to be, which I'm sure you can appreciate as a podcast host. But it's grown leaps and bounds. And actually, many of our early investors in the fund have been past guests on the podcast, believe it or not. So it just kind of turned out that way. We didn't really set it up for that express purpose, but that's kind of how it's turned out. But the podcast is really for corporate executives looking to, escape the corporate grind. So my wife and I are both fit in that camp, and our tagline is "Break Free, Design Your Legacy." So it's really about people that are trying to live life on purpose and very much intentionally design their life. So we're giving them lots of tools and tricks to do that. We've got a whole podcast series on artificial intelligence. It's never really been easier to start a new business now than it is with all the new tools that are coming out. It's amazing how much you can leverage them. Um, I spend, I don't know, hours every day just chatting with either Gemini or ChatGPT and consuming knowledge as quickly as I can. And in fact, that's really been a big part of me and our podcast journey. Like I can't imagine people having started this, 10 years ago or 5 years ago. There's so many steps to it, and there's so much work. And just the degree I can sit there and quiz ChatGPT about all the advanced analytics in Google and how specifically do I do this and what should I do next. And it's amazing. It just spits out all the answers for me. So I like to credit ChatGPT is really probably our best advisor so far in our business. It's amazing.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a very helpful tool, and everybody uses it differently. So that's interesting. As you have put the podcast together, you mentioned some investors that are current investors now have been on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Are you using the podcast more as a marketing arm for the various businesses, or is the podcast a business in and of itself? How do you guys, sort of toe that line?
Yeah, so sort of. Right now, we are going to be securing sponsors, so the podcast will be a standalone sort of media entity on its own. But it's really contemplated to be part of a bigger executive connect experience ecosystem. And my wife has her first book coming out this fall, so that's going to be part of the experience. We're also going to be doing live and virtual events as part of this, and she's going to be doing paid speaking engagements. So it's really kind of grown into more of like a holistic ecosystem. But again, that's not really the way it started. Really, kind of just started as a give back thing, and trying to also grow our relationships and our network. But as it's gone along, it's kind of, it's also had a lot of costs to go with it too. People don't realize how expensive podcasting is to get proper editing done and to make sure your hooks are the right way and to make sure your audio is the right way and then all the tooling is set up the right way. And so we have slowly been picking up a lot of those costs as we've gone along. And right now we're just mainly making sure that we kind of defray those costs for the podcast itself. But it will ultimately be part of a sort of a broader marketing ecosystem at scale. And we're not really there yet, but that's all part of what we're planning to set up.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean that's a great way to use it as almost sort of a hub to kind of get all of that other stuff going. One of the legs of a multi-leg marketing plan. So
Yeah.
that's interesting. What's the book going to be about that's coming out?
She would do a better job explaining it than I would, but it's called Renaissance. I know that that's the title. I don't know what the tagline is or like the subtitle, but a lot of it's going to be about her personal journey. She's writing it with one of her very good friends, Michelle Klein. So it's going to be about different archetypes for, like corporate executives and things like that.
Huh.
She hasn't let me read the whole thing yet, so I really can't do it justice in terms of telling you exactly what it's going to be about. But it is exciting. It's her first book. So we're learning a lot about book writing in the process.
Interesting. So you said before you got into this, your background was in real estate. Was that brokerage or was that investment? What type of real estate?
Yeah, so all different types of investment. I haven't ever got my broker's license. I did go take a lot of the classes at one point, but it just kind of didn't make sense for what we were doing because you have to maintain the license. But most of my, I don't know, last 15 years or so has been in ground up development projects in and
Oh,
around the Austin area. And they're almost all urban infill development. So we'll buy something and tear something down, build two or three in its place, or buy three or four and build 10 in its place, things like that.
Okay.
And these are all residential projects as well.
Okay. That was my next question was if it was residential or if it was some sort of mixed use, development or what was going on.
Yeah, no, we've owned apartment complexes before. I mean, some people consider that residential, but it's really a commercial loan, so I can consider those commercial properties. But our sweet spot has really been in the residential space, ground up development.
Wow, nice. All right. So you go from that into the Texas Freedom Fund. What's the connection between the real estate and then this? I'm just curious. How do you get from one to the
Well,
other?
yeah, they're both real assets. So I'm a big believer in, real assets. The financial stocks and bonds and stuff like that's fine. I mean, it has a place in everybody's portfolio, but just the way the government's been spending our money and the purchasing power of the dollar, I just really believe in the real assets. What's great about real estate is early in your career, you can leverage things, right? So people generally have limited dollars to invest. And so you can leverage those limited dollars into bigger asset values that, if purchased correctly, over time should grow in value. But as my career is sort of advanced, and I've got different problems, chief of which is the tax problem that we are talking about before. This became more interesting. The connection point actually is I go to a Ken Harris meetup here in town. It's a commercial real estate meetup group, and I've been going to that, I don't know, for 10 years or so. And one day, an oil and gas broker came and he stood up and he's like, "Who in here has a very high active tax problem?" And my ears perked up. And he started talking about intangible drilling costs and a bunch of stuff I had never heard about before, which was kind of ironic because I grew up in Austin. So everybody thinks in Texas that everybody rides around on horses with cowboy hats and we're all out, chasing wildcatting oil deals and things like that. But I've never heard of this stuff before. I'm sure the guys out in Permian Basin, it's old hat for them. But so I've got really into that. And, honestly, a deal structure, it's not a whole lot different. I mean, it's set up different, but fundamentally, what people care about are the same things. It's like, what's the duration of the investment? What are my risks? When do I get my money back? How much do I have to invest? What is my upside? What is the steady income? Those sorts of things. And those are really all deal points that are pretty common between, real estate syndications or private equity funds in the real estate space or apartment deals or whatever else. So there's kind of a risk spectrum. And this is just a different type of risk. There's a lot of commodity risk for sure. Oil prices are very volatile, so they can go up and down. But I like to tell everybody that there's a lot of vested interests in the world that really like to keep oil between like that 60 and $90 a barrel price point. If it starts to get too much more expensive than that, economies tend to go into recession. And if it starts to get quite a bit less expensive than that, it really encourages some different behaviors. So that's really kind of the sweet spot in the industry. And if you look at long periods of time, that's kind of where in a real dollar basis, kind of where it floats. And so the deals that we're doing, if it's kind of stays in that sweet spot, they do really well.
Nice. Interesting. Now, is this open to any investor who's got, that kind of money, or are you, selective about the investors that come in terms of maybe foreign investors or, foreign players or anything like that from,
Yeah.
overseas?
Yeah, in theory, and before investors could invest, but really the people who benefit the most are people with U.S. tax returns that are really being able to take advantage of that tax treatment we were talking about. But it is limited for accredited investors. So, I don't know if your audience is familiar with that, but you got to have $1 million in net worth, not including your house, or you have to have 200,000 in income or 300,000 with your spouse the last couple of years. So that's really who the investments are suitable for, just given the way that it's set up.
Interesting. Okay. All right. So is that kind of the main focus of what you're working on right now? Is the Texas Freedom Fund? Or is there other stuff going on in your world in the background? More real estate?
Yeah, yeah. Well, we still have some real estate deals we're exiting in Austin. It's not the greatest market right now, so that's not the funnest experience right now. But we've got the real estate projects that we're still planning to do. We've got a company called Integrity Development that we'll do some more of those through. But the focus right now is really the fund, getting that up and running, and then the podcast and growing that.
Nice.
And then also helping my wife with her executive connect experience, sort of like outgrowth of the podcast.
Very cool. I like it. Going back to the podcast, what do you guys do, collectively to promote the podcast and get the word out there?
Yeah, we've done just inordinate amounts of work, more than I ever would have wanted to do on learning the YouTube algorithm, like the suggested views percentage and dialing that and getting all the things right. So we've done a lot with that. We're actually planning on coming out as part of this new Executive Connect experience. We're going to have our own newsletter as well. We do have a very expansive network. I think between my wife's following and mine on YouTube, not YouTube, on LinkedIn, I think we have like between 35 and 40,000 connections. So we will start to put it out to those as well. And then, we might do some targeted paid media campaigns too. But it's kind of weird in the industry. It's like, if we're going to do ads, I would almost rather just send the folks straight to our website, instead of to our podcast. I haven't really cracked that code. And then we're still learning the audio part of the podcast too. So we have all of our hosting with Spreaker right now, and then I hooked up all the OSHA or OSHA, I don't know how you say it, AUSHA. So I've been tracking our visibility score and our keyword rankings and some stuff like that. But really haven't done as much work on that side. I kind of feel like that's older technology, and it's also to me a little harder to control because it's on an
Mm,
RSS feed and it goes out to all the different channels. And you'd have to try and learn how they rank things on all the different channels. But we just really have mostly started with YouTube and trying to get really good at that. Because I mean, it's just amazing the analytics tools in YouTube. I mean, you can really
yeah.
do a lot of analysis if you want to. And I have kind of an analytics background, so I kind of geek out on that stuff.
Well, so you're like in your comfort zone looking at all those numbers and everything, huh?
Yeah, well, trying to. I mean, it's you kind of I almost feel like there should maybe there is. You should go to like a YouTube 101 university where they teach you what all these things mean and how the algorithm works and how to make sure it's happy and all those things. Like recently the podcast has grown to a point where we're starting to like purge old viewers. I guess there's like spam and spam. I'm sorry, spam bot accounts or something like that we picked up along the way for whatever reason.
Hmm.
So when you kind of get to the 1,000 subscriber mark, at least for us, it started to get rid of a lot of that because it's really trying to tune our click through rate and some other things for us. So I'm learning all about that right now with my chat GPT sessions.
Nice. No, I love that. Okay. Now, I usually ask folks if they've had a chance to monetize the podcast. You're with Spreaker, so that gives you a chance to monetize in small doses and things like that. And then you did mention that you were bringing on sponsorships. Is that right?
Yeah, we have our first sponsor coming on August of this year that will help to defray some of the costs. And we actually just set up a bunch of playlists on YouTube. I have 12 distinct playlists. So we're really going to have sponsors sponsoring each playlist, and then they're going to have sort of a package set up for a certain amount of episodes per month. And then we will monetize on YouTube and get a couple bucks coming in that way relatively soon. But I haven't really figured out how to do any of the Spreaker monetization stuff yet. Our downloads aren't high enough yet to really worry about that much. But all of our stuff is ultimately going to get tied into our bigger vision with our newsletter and speaking engagements and all that stuff. So we'll probably design our sponsor packages around that holistic experience and not just the podcast itself.
For sure, for sure. You brought up earlier, it's difficult, especially if you start thinking about running paid ads. Or at what point what are you advertising? Are you actually advertising the
Yeah,
podcast, so that they listen to that, but then you're using the podcast to try to send them to the website. So why not just go straight to the website? It sounds
right.
like your podcast is very much a just an integral piece of your marketing, for all the other things you're doing. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, it's fair. One of the things that's going on with like for YouTube is we do have an ICP, like an ideal customer persona that we're targeting.
Hmm.
But YouTube very much just trying to fit you in their sort of paradigm and their ecosystem.
Right.
And so we've got a lot of Canada and like adjacent markets right now, and that's not really a perfect ICP for us. but the idea is we should be graduating to the States now with up leveling our stats. Like right now, we're getting about between 40 and 55,000 views a month on the podcast.
Okay.
And I've got a plan here for Q3 to get us to about double that. So I've seen that, around the 100,000 of view metric, that's when we can start to attract, better guests. Not that our guests right now aren't great, but, better quality guests, which will get more views and more attention. So we've got some big name guests that we're working on trying to get on the show right now. We're kind of knocking at their door. So hopefully they'll answer pretty soon.
Nice. Nice. How have you handled the sponsorship piece that you've said is, kind of you've been working on? Are you sponsoring like 30-second ads? Are they live reads? Are they pre-rolls? I'm just curious, what you've been kind of, dabbling in and what took off for you.
Yeah, so our fund actually has the mid roll. A lot of it's had that for several months now. What we're probably going to do are live reads, and that'll probably be for the pre-roll because our average view duration is not, 12 minutes now or whatever. It's really kind of a lower number as we're still ramping up.
Hmm.
So that's probably going to be the more valuable ad space for our podcast, given where it is right now.
Right.
So yeah, pretty standard stuff. And then most of them will have like a QR code or some sort of bit.ly code or something, and they'll have a landing page that, tries to get people to do whatever they're trying to get them to do. And then we'll also have them sponsor each of the playlists too on YouTube. So that's kind of the thought process right now. Longer term, that's going to sort of evolve into a more holistic experience. We got to get the more holistic experience built first before we can do that.
Sure. Sure. You mentioned having guests on the podcast. What types of guests do you folks bring on to the podcast? What are you looking for out of your guests? That type of thing.
Yeah, so we really are, like I mentioned before, we're targeting corporate executives that are looking to go do their own thing. So our whole first year was a lot of, stuff squarely aimed at corporate executives, meeting them where they were, leading skills, empathy skills, those sorts of more corporate topics. The last year or so, we've shot a lot of small business and entrepreneurship topics, online marketing, growing your brand, self-directed IRAs, solo Ks, risk capital topics, those sorts of things. And so, like, sort of that Venn diagram where those two things intersect, that's where a lot of our content's going to be. Just looking at our playlists and things right now, people are super interested in AI, which I guess is shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. So we have very specifically booked, I think we've got like 10 or 15 guests to shoot content for that. So I've got a lot of that content banked right now. And as soon as we get all of our editing perfected, we'll probably start to release that in like a little mini series to try and grow the channel some. But
Hmm.
that tends to be what people are really interested in right now. For us, is like risk capital topics. They want to know how to grow their money, and then they also are interested in AI. Because it's either going to help them be more efficient or be able to leverage their limited amount of time resources they have more efficient to be able to grow their own. But there's also topics on growing your career inside the corporate space too. So just making the most of what you have in a career for now, while you're working on building your other thing longer term.
Interesting. Okay. So it ends up being a prospect tool, not only for the guests that come on, but for other people listening to it to try and attract them into the program.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what it's turned into. Again, it didn't start that way, but that tends to be like product market fit wise. That tends to be what most of the personas that we're attracting are interested in. Autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And so we're trying to give them the tools to be able to achieve those goals.
Nice. Okay, nice. So how long have you been doing the podcast and how many episodes have you got?
We have so the podcast turns two at the end of this month, which is July 2025, at the very last day of the month. So we're almost two. I'd like to say that probably fits our persona really well right now, or like the arc of where we are. Is very much still a toddler, although I do think that we're kind of we're learning the game right now, but we're still perfecting our craft. And we just so let's see, tomorrow, next 2 days from now is Wednesday. We'll be releasing our 85th episode. So we've been doing one a week. So a little less than one a week for the last 2 years. I think we had a couple hiccups there at the beginning, but we have been regularly releasing every Wednesday for well over a year now, probably a year and a half. And I've got plenty of content to work up to twice a week right now, but we need to secure the sponsor dollars to be able to do that. So we're kind of in that part of the loop right now. I think it's kind of called like, I don't know, like the optimization part of what we're doing. So we're very
Sure.
much in the, cleaning up our click-through rate data and, perfecting our average view duration and getting our suggested percentages up for the algorithm, all those sorts of things. We're very focused on those things right now.
Nice. So you and your wife run the podcast. Is this something where the two of you are handling all of these tasks that are going on, or are you farming some of this out?
No, gosh, no. And we couldn't possibly do everything ourselves with our busy jobs and 4 kids. But I primarily do the intake, so guest screening, sourcing, all of like sort of the business aspect of it, trying to secure sponsors, those sorts of things. And I do shoot, I don't know, maybe 10% of the content. And then my wife, Melissa, shoots almost all the content. So she's frankly a better conversationalist than I am, or much better looking. So both of which are better for the podcast. So that's really, she's sort of the talent behind everything, and I'm just sort of the operations of the business part of it.
Gotcha. All right. So she's up front. She's the front man, and you're behind the scenes.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, I do. She doesn't know the risk capital topics as well as I do, so I tend to shoot all of those. And then she's also busy with a day job, so she gets called away for work. Like right now, she just flew out to Canada for a sales call for the
Wow.
first 3 days of this week. So I'm actually going to be shooting today's episode for her, which is airing. We're actually producing it after this episode that you and I are doing. So stuff like that tends will happen. Some people want to reschedule, but others are just like, hey, I want to keep my slot because I'm busy doing other things. So I'll shoot those episodes for her if that comes up like that.
Sure. And you slid that in there, but 4 kids, huh?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The
Man.
three older girls and then I guess he's 3.5 now, year old boy that just got into Challenger school. So we're getting him into Challenger school this
Oh,
year, sort of
wow.
integrated. Yeah.
Well, congratulations on that. So you just kept going until you got the boy? Is that was that story?
Yeah, well, the other three were through my first marriage, but
Ah,
I did actually want a boy, so yeah, it took 4 times the charm, I guess, for us.
well, congratulations. 4 kids is awesome. So that's and that man, that certainly takes up some time too. So you guys have full-time jobs, 4 kids, and you're running all this stuff on the side as well.
Oh yeah, it's nuts. It's every day is
Wow.
nuts, and that's kind of what I like about what we're selling to for the Executive Connect experience is we're very much living it, right?
Right.
So I wouldn't profess that we have all of the answers, but we certainly have a lot of experience, kind of been through the crucible with all of it. And knowing how to try and calibrate your life the right way, like how much time are you carving out for your family? How are you designing something more intentionally, longer term for your legacy? And how are you trying to do all of that while juggling a busy corporate career? And we've both been doing that for 20 years now. So I'd like to think we have some experience in it. Certainly don't know everything. Certainly haven't figured it all out, but I feel like we have something to give back to folks.
Nice. Nice. The Executive Connect experience. Now, I don't you don't want to give away the secret sauce or anything, but one of the things I hear from people who are trying to start side hustles, trying to keep them going, is, I don't have any time. I don't have any time. So, what's maybe one piece of advice you can give folks on that, on like how to balance all of this? Maybe get going with the side hustle the way you want to, start that extra business, that type of thing.
I mean, the biggest piece of advice I could give people is you can make money or you can make excuses, but you can't make both, right? So, the I have time, I don't have time just means you're not making it a priority. So just say it's not a priority. There's enough hours in your day where you can cut out some TV time, you can cut out some extraneous. You have to make up your mind that it's something that you're going to prioritize and you schedule in your day. It's really just about making sure you're prioritizing what's important. important to you in life. And it's not for everybody. Like tell everybody that. So you definitely have to have a strong will and a strong personality. And if that's not you, that's perfectly okay. Maybe a different path to freedom is the right path for you. Maybe investing passively with somebody else, or really just keeping that, corporate job, and, making sure that you're optimizing it around your life and not the other way around.
Great advice. Wow. Yeah, that's excellent. Okay. So through Executive Connect, that's you help people make this transition?
Yeah. So and it's going to be giving people tools that they need. It's giving a lot of it is going to be mindset stuff that my wife's going to be teaching. And then, our fund is going to be giving people a financial tool to be able to help them achieve that freedom as well. So, most of these the oil and gas deals that we've got, you put your money in, you get it back in about 3 years, and then after that, it's like 1.5% cash on cash return per month. So that's a pretty typical deal. Plus, you get the tax benefits to go with it. So if you do three or four of those, you can usually get the fourth or fifth one for free because the government will have paid you for it, but it's by what you saved in taxes.
Hmm.
So I like to think of it kind of like a ladder strategy. You put your money in, you get it back. When you get it back, you go put it back in, you get the tax benefit again, and you kind of keep this process rolling. So the idea is once the money comes back, everything that's left in there is house money, and you're kind of laddering that up as, passive income over some period of time. And that's helping you design yourself into freedom. It's not a get rich quick thing, but done properly is a pretty reliable path to freedom.
Nice. So it's longer term goal planning, sounds like.
Yeah, longer term. I mean, over the period of, it depends on what you start with, right? But over the period of 10 years or so, most corporate executives should be able to design themselves out if they are thoughtful about the approach. And, some people might want to, not stop work, it just is giving them a nice buffer to be able to go spend more time growing their own thing and maybe, take a less demanding, less, chaotic job that kind of fits with their life a little better while they're growing their thing that they're really passionate about. So that's all about designing your legacy.
Nice. Okay. Um, I usually ask a corny question on this thing, about doing the podcast itself. So, in terms of doing your podcast, what is the thing that you guys love the most about doing the podcast, and what is the thing that you guys just really and truly hate the most about doing the podcast?
Well, I would have to say resoundingly, just being able to meet super interesting, motivated people has to be the best part of the experience. So, in a given week, I might be talking to somebody in Singapore and South Africa, or Romania, like all over the world. So it kind of brings out the best and the brightest all over the world. You get to see super interesting people and what they're doing worldwide. So that's undoubtedly probably the best part of it. Um, I do not enjoy the audio part of this for whatever reason. I guess it's because I started out in YouTube, and the whole industry seems to be built around audio's first podcasting, and I don't get it. It seems to me like if it's the biggest platform, that's where all the sponsors should be focused. And everybody, I don't know if it's because it's how they have their book built in terms of that's where they make their money on ad spend or what, but everybody seems to be real focused on audio first podcasting. And to me, as a podcaster, it's a lot harder to grow than the audio first stuff is. But maybe that's just because it's what I'm used to. I don't know. But I just generally haven't enjoyed that part of it as much as the other part for whatever reason.
Sure. No, I understand that. For sure. Absolutely understand that. 100%. Okay, yeah, excellent. The as we kind of, pull things together here, and I appreciate your answers that you've given me on all this stuff. You guys have so much going on. Um, and I did appreciate the answer too on it's not a priority for you. If you're not making time, it's because you're not making the time. As you kind of pull things together, though, and we look at the podcasting world for folks who are running a podcast, whether it's audio or visual, and they're not quite where you guys are yet. What's some advice you have for those folks in terms of making their podcast successful, like you guys, and getting into the realm of sponsorship?
I wish somebody had yanked me by the neck and at the beginning of this and told me to focus more on quality, right? And I know it's hard when you're first starting because you have a smaller following, so it's harder to attract good guests or the best caliber guest. We have a pretty big network, so we were able to draw from that. But I do think that that's harder to start out with, but just not only quality of the guest, but it's also quality of the product that you're putting out because the algorithms do very much favor quality entity. So a lot of the advice I've got, having done this for a couple of years now, is that more and scale is better as long as you're maintaining quality. But it's kind of hard to do both until you've got a nice process set up and you've been doing it for a while. So I guess the piece of advice I would give is, really kind of trying to focus more on the editing quality than we did to start out with. Part of that is you don't know who the best vendors are to help with these things too, because you're kind of learning everything as you're going. But just generally having a bias in that direction, I think would help everybody.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. I haven't heard that one necessarily. I like that. Like it very much. All right. Bryan, as we kind of pull things together, you guys have a lot of things going on. So let me just kind of ask you one final question here. Is there anything that I didn't ask you? Is there anything that, maybe we talked about and you want to drive home one last time? Or maybe a leave behind or, kind of a nugget for everybody who's, out there listening to this episode. I'm going to give you the floor for the last minute or two. It's all yours, sir. So go for it.
We're talking about podcasting specifically.
Honestly, anything about what you guys are doing. Like I said, if there's something that you want to make sure people know about or that we talk about that I didn't
Yeah.
ask you about, and maybe you want to drive it home a little more, for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean we covered a lot of the main stuff. I'd love for folks who are newer in their journey on podcasting. I'd love to have a conversation with you, share what I've learned. My wife actually keeps trying to get me to go do consulting on it, which I do not want to do. But please check us out, Executive Connect podcast. I like to think that we've had some really great guests on the podcast. And I'd very much love to have a conversation. If you are one of those high active taxable income folks, I'd love to talk to you about our new fund and see if it maybe is a good fit for you.
Yeah, excellent. Love that. All right. Great wrap up. I appreciate you very much. Folks, the founder of the Texas Freedom Fund and host of the Executive Connect podcast with his wife and father of four kids. Can't let that go because that's a huge accomplishment as well. Bryan Hancock. Bryan, it's been great having you on the podcast today, brother, and answering all these questions. Thank you for coming on here and sharing everything with everybody. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on.
All right. Thank you very much, folks. This is another episode of The Podcaster Nation. And the reason we get awesome guests like this is because this is the podcast that's about podcasters, it's for podcasters, and it's done by podcasters. And folks, yeah, we talk to podcasters on here. So it works out really, really well. This is the place where the rising tide raises all ships, folks. So keep sailing.